Hello, everyone. Welcome to CSINext April chapter meeting. I am Mark Ogg, your current chapter president for fiscal 24 or 23-24. I am joined today by Emily Hobbs. Emily is one of our newest CSINext members, and she resides down in St. Thomas, Virgin Islands. And she is our presenter today. We're going to talk a little bit about building what I call island style. I had the pleasure to meet Emily back in January when I was down in St. Thomas on vacation. I got to spend about 15-20 minutes with her before our boat took back off, but had a good discussion and thought this would be a great topic to talk about what it takes to get things done down in that section of the world. And happy to announce that Emily is also one of our newest board of director members for the chapter. She will be starting as a director July 1st this fiscal year with CSINext, and very excited to have her as part of our chapter leadership team. And before we get started, I would like to again thank our current sponsors, Architectural Woodwork Institute, National Gypsum, Northern Facades, KM Architectural Consultants, and Mr. Daniel Hargreaves, your continued support ongoing many years with this chapter. All of you has allowed us to expand to what we have become today and provide a unique CSI member experience for a lot of folks throughout the United States and throughout the world. So thank you again for that, and we look forward to your continued involvement and continued support. With that, we'll start to get this turned over to Emily for her presentation. And during this, if you have any questions, please type them in the chat not the chat box, the question and answer box. I will see them pop up on my screen, and we'll get to them as soon as we can. And with that, I think we're ready to go. So Emily, thank you for joining us and welcome.
Thank you so much, Mark. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm going to start my screen share here and get into my presentation. All right. Hopefully everything looks good. All right. So welcome to
Emily, if you can hit slideshow or
oh, whoops. Okay.
yeah, that one shows up better.
There we go. How does it look?
Perfect. There we
Great.
go. Awesome.
Thank you. All right, residential construction in the US Virgin Islands. So hi everyone, I'm Emily Hobbs. I'm an architect in St. Thomas in the Virgin Islands, and I'm going to share a project very near and dear to me, which is the construction of my home. I have been living here in St. Thomas for a majority of my life. My family's essentially from St. Thomas in the Virgin Islands, and I've been back here on island for about 10 years now, ever since 2014. And it has been a long time dream of mine to build my own house. And I can happily say that we finished construction last month of this year. So I'm going to share some photos and some explanations of some design decisions that we made for my home. And I'm just going to share a little bit of information about common practices for building on island, given our unique location. So just to kind of orient everyone, St. Thomas is located in the United States Virgin Islands. Our closest port for when we, essentially ship in materials and products to our island is Miami, Florida. And it is very common practice to order building materials and products and have it essentially shipped to Florida, and then via cargo ships, it is sent to our island. So you can see we're located over here on the far right. It's a very small island, and whatever we can't find and locate on island, we will source and then have shipped to us through Florida. And to kind of dive a little bit deeper into our unique location, this is a view of the north side of St. Thomas. If anyone is familiar with St. Thomas, Megan's Bay Beach here on the left is a very famous beach, very popular. And our home is located here on the right in this little bubble here in yellow. And that is our job site. and I will share some preliminary site photos here with you. So essentially, this is some property that I have, fortunately, through my family. That's my mom here in one of the photos. And the design process took a while. I had been working on several design versions of what I could build on this land, given the terrain, given the soil, given the orientation. And once we had the design figured out and excavation started, a lot changed, as sometimes can happen, just given the design parameters and existing conditions. So just to kind of start us off, this is when we first started to break ground, which was January of 2023. So I had started the design in around January of 2020, and we went through several design changes and was able to secure permitting in 2021. And then we broke ground and started excavation in January of 2023. So you can see from some of these site photos the kind of conditions we were working with. It was very rocky and very steep. So we were really mitigating a lot of how large we could build and how much we could essentially fit on this property and on this site. And a lot of these machines and people that you're seeing in these photos are my parents, who helped me a lot with transitioning from design to construction. My parents are now retired, but used to own a construction company. So they definitely worked as advisors for me throughout this process and helped me make a lot of these design decisions. So there's a couple more photos here of the excavation, and something I want to share is that it is very common in St. Thomas in the Virgin Islands to not only have very rocky sites, but very steep sites with very steep terrain. And so you're really kind of coordinating with how much you can build, how much rock you're moving, and how big of a building footprint you can fit on a site. And you'll see in the photo on the left, there's a lot of these smaller boulders. Those were actually broken down from much larger boulders. I wanted to keep a lot of the boulders on site. The site as it was very beautiful, and I did my best to keep the building footprint very small and still have a decent sized home and keep the site conditions as close as to what they were in the beginning as possible. We did end up breaking down a lot of boulders on site and just removing them via dump trucks off property. And fortunately, there was another job site very close to ours that had a need for boulders and infill. So we were able to work in trade essentially and remove a lot of the earthwork from my site to a neighboring property. And here's one more view of that. Essentially, the property is located just right off the main road. And you can see here on the right-hand side, there's still so much more boulders and rocks located on property. And we didn't want to move too many items. I really loved how it looked, so I didn't want to have to change the landscape too much. So we did what we could to get a decent sized home on this property.
Emily, got a question that someone typed in.
Yeah.
The boulders, are they typically used? I mean, obviously with the slopes and stuff down on the island there, are they used as part of a I guess we call it like a retaining wall or retention or some type of structural support? Are they used in that aspect as well as, I mean, obviously boulders wouldn't take the replace of a retaining wall if you needed one.
Right.
But are they used to help as some type of shoring and slide support for houses that are built either into hills or have possible slide conditions around them?
Yes, yeah, they definitely can be. And so, in the event of the neighbor that was building close by to us, they used a lot of the boulders to make like a rubble wall, like a boulder wall to retain some of their landscaping. So, the boulder walls don't have as much of a retaining capacity as pouring like a cast in place concrete wall. But if you're terracing land or just trying to create a delineation on your site or, in your landscaping, the rocks can be used and they can be built with mortar to retain some earth. Um, and on my site, you can see here on the right, that is all pure rock right there. That's all boulders. And I have in the plans an 8 foot retaining wall planned for that area, just because the capacity to retain earth is much higher for a concrete wall. So we're doing a concrete wall there on the right. But if we had maybe less of a demand for retaining earth, we could do a boulder wall. Just given the height of how much I excavated, I mean, I ended up excavating 12 feet in height. And I'll get into the reason why later. If maybe it was just 3 or 4 or 5 feet in height that you were retaining, you could reuse some of these boulders removed from site, and build a boulder wall out of them to retain some earth. So great question. Yeah, that is pretty common on island too. If any of you are ever able to visit, you'll see that there are a lot of stone walls and rock walls. Sometimes the stone is also broken down and used as a veneer if you want to have that rock wall look, but you need retaining capacity of, a poured wall. Uh, People will build a wall and then break down stones and just apply it to the wall as a veneer so that aesthetically it looks like a boulder wall. So that's pretty common as well. Um, I have plans, it's included in these plans to build a retaining wall. We haven't built it yet, but I do have plans to build it this summer. Essentially, it's going to be an 8 foot wall, 8 foot tall retaining wall. And you can kind of see in this site plan here, there are plans for some boulders at the bottom of the driveway. So this is the site plan, and you can see that the site is very narrow but long. And there were plans originally when we started the design in 2020 to build a long linear building. But once we surveyed the site and we saw how much boulders there were, we really did not want to have to pave the entire site and remove all of those rocks. So we decided for a much smaller floor plan and a very simple driveway. And part of the reason why we ended up excavating so much earth was that the slope was so steep that I had to choose between, do I want to keep the house high up on the hill with a beautiful view, but the compromise would be that we would have a very steep driveway entry, or do we want to excavate down so that I have a more reasonable driveway entry, and that would result in the building footprint being cast lower, and not as great of a view, but at least it was a reasonable site to pull into safely and turn around. And that's what I ended up choosing. I ended up just creating a driveway entry that was much easier to pull in and out of, and opted for the higher retaining wall. Um, if anyone's ever able to visit St. Thomas, you will quickly learn how steep some of the driveways are, how crazy some of the driving conditions are. If you learn to drive here, you can basically drive anywhere because the roads are a bit crazy. But I really didn't want to have to worry about having a strange or difficult, slope of a driveway and entry point, being that we're located right off the main road. So that's why we ended up excavating so much.
Yeah, there's definitely not a lot of flat area. I can
Yeah.
attest to that.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, Mark has seen it. It's a very steep island, very rocky and steep. Um, so a bit about the site plan. The building is oriented as north as possible, and you'll see later in some of the drawings and photos. We wanted to design the home to have as much glazing to the north as possible and then minimize windows and glazing on the south. Being that we're in a hot and humid climate, we wanted to combat heat gain as much as possible and create opportunities for natural ventilation. And I will get all into that when I get into the drawings. So Here are the lower and upper level plans and a quick photo, and I will go through a bit of what you're seeing here. So common construction in the Virgin Islands is to construct a cistern on the bottom level of a home for your water supply. So a lot of the parcels on island are in remote locations, and public water supply is not available to all buildings on island. There are some locations on island that are in an easier terrain where they have public water supply, but I was not one of those homes. So it's very common to find, homes on the hillside that create their own water supply, and it's stored underneath their home, and essentially water is caught from your roof through downspouts, and then it fills into a cistern located on the bottom level of your home. And that is all of your water supply for everything you would need at home. And you live in a very sparing way to save that water as much as possible. So with that said, I'll start on the upper left corner here. This is the lower level plan for the home. The home is 24 feet by 24 feet, very simple square floor plan. And I just designated half of the lower level to water storage, which meets the gallon capacity requirement for this size home. And the other half of the downstairs level is a small apartment that I will also be using as my office because I work from home. And this is very common. You'll see on island that lower level homes end up with a small unit or apartment downstairs because the cistern and water is located on the bottom level as well. And on the upper level, which is here on the right, it's a pretty open floor plan, kind of like a studio space. And that's really all we needed. So that's great for us. And you can see on the photo that's located on the lower left, the downspouts that are being put in place around the formwork to allow for water catchment from the roof. And that's going to feed down into the cistern on the lower level. And in that photo, you can see that solid wall on the bottom where there's no windows. That's because that's where the body of water is for the water supply. And some of the details here on the right side of the screen are the cistern details, which essentially you're coating the inside of a cistern so that it can, store water in a clean way. Essentially, it's like a pool on the bottom level of your home, and it is accessed from some hatches on the main level, which are just, 2.5 feet by 2.5 feet hatches. If you ever need to go into the cistern to clean anything out or maintain it or reseal it, that would be the way in which you would access the cistern. Sometimes we just pop it open to see how much water we have left. If we ever do use all of our water supply, we do a rain dance and hope that it rains soon so that we can replenish our supply. Or it is very common on island to order a truck of water. And there are several companies on island that will deliver a truck load of water and fill your water supply for you.
Emily, it would on the water level, is there like the storage system, is there like a detector or a level sensor that'll give you a little heads up that, hey, you're getting
Yes.
close to getting low?
There are. I don't personally have one, but there are, especially on larger homes and some of the vacation villas on island. They're essentially smart homes, and they're equipped with something that looks like a thermostat on your wall. And there are sensors put in the cistern that will let you know the water height. And essentially the calculation will be programmed in to let you know how many gallons you have remaining. Um, Given that our home is pretty small and it's just us living here, we just use the good old-fashioned visual tool. I'll pop
Look
it
in there and
open, and
see.
yeah, I could even throw a measuring tape in there if I wanted to. Typically cisterns are about 8 feet in height, and so you'll account for maybe a 6.5, 7 foot height of water because you leave a little bit of space at the top for overflows. I've got them shown here in the upper left corner. Essentially, you put a couple of overflows so that if it rains a lot, your cistern doesn't overflow into your home. It will just pitch the water out. So you end up with about a 7 foot height of water capacity. If it ever reaches that high, we are very happy because we can take very long showers and do a lot of laundry, but it usually isn't ever at max capacity. So we just live in a very kind of sparing way and save as much water as we can. All right. And I'll get a little bit more into the utilities about the home because I think that living in a remote location, what really changes building design in the Virgin Islands or remote locations in general are the utilities, how you're getting fresh water to your building, how you're handling electricity, plumbing, air conditioning. So I'll get more into that next, but here are some quick elevation and section views of the design and how components are starting to play out. So you can see in the lower right-hand corner, there's a lot of windows, there's a lot of doors. That's the north elevation. That's where we were really trying to gain as much indirect light as possible to keep the house just very naturally lit without too much artificial lighting. And we located smaller windows on the south side of the house because that's actually the side of the house that faces the main road. And so we wanted privacy, but not only that, we wanted to combat southern heat gain. So we just kept those windows a little bit smaller, and all of the windows are operable so that we could open them up and get as much cross ventilation as possible. Um, it's very common on island for power to go out for a couple hours at a time, sometimes a day or two at a time. So even though we plan to install AC and we're going to have air conditioning systems on both floors, in the event that there is a power outage, we want to be able to open up all the windows and get some, breeze and some wind going through the house so we can stay cool. So that's why there's kind of windows on all sides and they're all operable to promote natural ventilation. There aren't any shutters on this home because we decided to just do the hurricane rated, impact rated glass on all the windows and doors, just as an architectural decision. It is very common on island if homeowners are seeking that Caribbean aesthetic, that traditional Caribbean look, they will get wood shutters in addition to having hurricane rated glass, just because it informs the architecture that much more. But we were going for a more modern look, and that's why this home doesn't have any of that Caribbean shutter look to it. And with that said, here's some quick renders that we did to start to get an idea of what the house would look like. I think that it's a kind of unique house on island because I'll show you a couple photos next of what some other homes look like on island. We opted for a single sloped roof. We do plan to put solar on it in the future. And we just wanted to make very kind of simple, modern kind of selections. We wanted it to be the home to be compliant for hurricane resistance and be able to be built by local labor trades on island. So it is an all concrete, cast in place concrete build, including the roof. And that works well on island. Just in the event of a storm, we are safe during hurricane season. And we just tried to make it as unique as possible by having that single slope roof and having these like clear story windows. And I will show you a couple photos of what some other buildings on island look like. So these are more typical construction photos on island, or finished construction, I should say, and more traditional Caribbean architecture. So you'll see more often hip roofs on island, and usually topped with metal. So it would be a wood framed roof with metal top, whether it's the traditional corrugated red metal you'll find in downtown a lot in the historic district. There's standing seam metal roofs are pretty common as well. And in this photo in the lower right hand corner, you'll see what the roof framing kind of looks like from inside the space, where you'll have, the timber framing 2 feet on center, and you'll have tongue and groove wood, and then you'll have your insulation and metal and rooftop from that point on. And this works well on island, and this is compliant. And as long as all of the hurricane fasteners and straps are in place, this works really well. We just decided to choose a roof finish that would be just have a little bit more longevity. Metal roofs, they usually will last you about 10, maybe 15 years if you take really good care of them. And we wanted something that we could just apply solar to, and then, really just maintain on our own and not have to replace over time. So that's why we opted for the single slope concrete roof. A couple other kind of just quick little bit of information about St. Thomas or Virgin Islands construction. And I kind of mentioned it before, is that 2 levels. That's really common on island because of the cisterns and because of the steep slope of our terrain. Most homes are 2 stories. The bottom level will be a cistern with usually a smaller apartment or bedroom or smaller unit of some sort that's either rented out or as an apartment or used by the owner. And then the main level upstairs will just encompass the entire building footprint above. So you won't really see single story buildings too often here. Okay, so I'm going to segue back into some construction photos. This is our form work for our main level being put in place. You can start to see the building take shape. You can see some of the, window framing, and you can see the roof being formed. This photo is actually from when we poured the lower level cistern. So this is the slab that was poured for the lowest level, and the rebar coming up for that. These are going to host the walls that enclose the cistern. And these photos are of the framework for the lower level as well. This side is that apartment on the lower level with the 2 smaller windows facing south. And the cistern is actually here on the right-hand side with the exposed rebar. And so a little bit more about the utilities for building on an island. So, I kind of went over how we get our fresh water supply. Our electrical, currently our home is connected right now to the public electric system. This is our meter base, which is located right off the main road of our home. And essentially the city will install a meter, and ideally we will switch to an all solar panel situation when we get there, but this is what we have for now. And all of our electrical is run underground and then fed into the home. And
Emily,
then
is the looks like a concrete type pillar that it's mounted to or against. Is that something that's poured in place, or is that something that's precast and available down there? Because it makes sense why it's there with hurricanes and stuff to
right.
protect it from wind and damage as much as it can.
Right. Yes. This one is poured in place. They can be built out of block as well. Essentially you want to build it as, resilient as possible. I think older homes in the Virgin Islands had the monument actually mounted on their home, but the newest requirements from the city is to actually put a monument like this close to the main road. So what our electrical company actually does is they will drive around island to each address and check their meter for usage, and that's how you're charged for your electrical. There are some locations on island that have electrical meters that they can read from their office, from the city's office, but our location doesn't have that. So this is our monument that's located off the main road, and a lot of people will build their electrical monument into like a driveway entry gate or a post where their mailbox is. And we hope to do that too once we pour our driveway. But in order to just get our house powered and started, we just poured the monument for now.
Got it.
Thanks. And then a little bit more about the cistern. So on the photo on the left here, this is our pump room location. And this is pretty common for ground floors as well, where there will be a pump, a water heater, and essentially it's just pulling the freshwater supply from that cistern and sending it upstairs or wherever the freshwater supply is needed. So in design, there's always a space allocated, for utilities, for pump rooms, and spaces like that. Our pump room is not yet enclosed, so this is the best photo I have right now, but it's a work in progress. And then these are the cistern overflows here that you can see, which are now piped. At the time that I took this, they were still open, but I relocated them from where they were in the plans originally to this side of the house because it just worked out better on this side of the house. And I will show you a few more photos about some design changes that ended up happening inevitably throughout the construction process. So here's a couple photos of some finishes we started to choose for the house. The photo on the left is just a really quick screenshot of the model I put together for the house. Originally, we had some sliding glass doors, just a couple of very standard sizes picked for the house. But then, as an architect in the Virgin Islands, and I'm running around several job sites at a given time, there was an opportunity where a client of mine was trying to sell some sliding glass doors that they no longer needed. And I thought, perfect, I'm building my house. So I checked with my engineer. I checked if we could make these new window sizes or these new door sizes that I had stumbled across work. And we made some changes in the field so that I could essentially buy some sliding glass doors that were already on island that I didn't have to ship through Miami. And I got some savings by doing so. So that was a fun change. And then, of course, the inevitable cabinetry, countertop selections, and then, of course, the paint color here on the right was a lot more difficult to figure out than I thought it would be. Here's some more construction photos. This is when we poured our roof, our concrete roof, and you could see the mat of rebar here in the photos as well. That was a very exciting time. And the downspouts, if you recall from the earlier photo, are located in the walls here, and there's essentially two in the two corners of the downward slope of the roof.
Emily, is the slab for the roof, is that a lightweight concrete?
Yes, yeah, it's a different
Okay.
grade than the others.
Right.
Yes. Yeah, it's a lighter grade. And eventually this roof will be full of solar panels at some point. A little bit more about building utilities is being in a remote location. We do have a wastewater treatment plant for our home. It's very common on island for each home has its own septic tank, essentially. There's only a few areas on island that actually have a public means of a septic system. So I looked up kind of the most responsible system I could find and source and ship to island, which is this 3-chamber, 600 gallon per day system. And this type of system is required on island in coastal areas if you're very close to the shoreline. In more inward and countryside parts of the island, they will allow a traditional concrete construction for a septic storage system and a leach field. However, given our soil conditions, given the amount of rock on island and capacities of leach fields, the island is leaning more towards wastewater treatment plants such as this rather than traditional septic storage systems. So in all of the plans that I work with my clients, I always specify this system, and based on the capacity or, whether it's a single family home or more, I try to find the right system that works for them. But I did a bit of research for us and tried to get something that was all the bells and whistles for our own home, because that is not something we would ever want to skip out on.
Now is there, I know you mentioned you had this system shipped in. Are there
Yes.
any companies on the island that manufacture or make them there, or they pretty much all have to come in from outside?
They are shipped in. There are companies on island that have similar tanks to this available. They're usually single or double system, but I opted to have this one shipped in because I wanted to try it out myself so that I can recommend it for projects moving forward. A lot of the projects that I work on are on the coast, very close to the beach. So um, I kind of, for a single family home with just 2 bedrooms, this is kind of more than I would need for our home. We would be just fine with a single or a double chamber system, but I really wanted to test this out so that I could specify it in the future. But there are companies on island. I mean, we do have locally owned building companies on island. We also do have more, franchise type building companies on island that will source and ship this item on island for you. But I just called the manufacturer directly and asked for a distributor that distributes for the Caribbean region. And then I was able to ship this on island from Miami.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah. I skipped over some of the stores because I just wanted to I like to get to know manufacturers and distributors as much as possible. So this is a couple photos of our home once the formwork was removed. And you can start to see, some design elements have changed a little bit. We revised some of our window sizes and locations. Um, but this was a really exciting moment to see all the formwork removed because we could actually see the house come to shape. And something really cool that also happened that same time frame where we removed the formwork is we found some kittens on our job site. Um, and they were kind of looking to make our home their home, and we ended up adopting them because they were in need of our help. So that's my partner CJ and I at the helm, and we essentially have rehomed these kittens since finding them. And we also do have some wood framing. We have this loft space above our kitchen. This was us over the holidays framing out this space. The ceiling height or the roof height is 16 feet. So we thought it was a great opportunity to include just a little bit more storage space and create a little office space on the upper level right below these clear story windows. And this is the beginning of our doors being framed in. This is one of the doors that I was able to buy from a job site on island that no longer needed it. So originally in the plans, there was just 2 smaller sliding glass doors, and we were able to swap this out, which was really exciting. The home isn't too large, so it was really exciting to kind of have these opportunities for larger glazing wherever we could gain it. And this is when we started to paint the exterior, and we've got some railings being installed. That's my mom there in the photo. This is also the windows and doors are installed, which was really exciting. This is when we were getting close to completion, but as you could see, there was still lots that needed to get done. Some photos of the interior. This is now that lofted, you were seeing us frame out that wood loft. This is it now finished and painted. We've got light fixtures installed. Our cabinets were installed. We were essentially going through punch list items at this point, starting to order appliances, make sure plumbing, electrical was working. This is probably the cleanest I'll ever see my house. So I took as many photos as possible because now that I moved in, it is very messy. But it was really exciting to kind of see all these design decisions over time being installed and implemented. So these are just photos of that space, and everything installs as it is. Our tile we were able to purchase on island. We tried to buy as many items as possible on island to not only support local businesses, but to really just lessen the demand of how much we were ordering and then shipping via cargo freight from Florida. There were some items where we just had to ship it in, and we came to terms with that. But a lot of the tile was from on island, and a lot of the light fixtures as well. So we tried to keep it as local as possible to kind of minimize our footprint in shipping items in.
When it comes from, say, Miami,
Mhm.
and it comes in via ship, how long of a shipment time is that? And is there anything when it gets to port, does it need to go through, I would assume probably like customs, clearance,
Yes.
duties, that kind of, what's that process look like?
Very, very good question. Yes, so there's like a cutoff deadline. I believe it's like every Thursday of the week, where if you order something, you will send your invoice to a freight forwarding company. There's several. that service the islands, and you let them know, hey, I ordered this. There will be a delivery truck coming to your port in Miami to drop it off. It's for me, put it on my account, and they will ship it on island. The cutoff for orders will be like on a Thursday, and then it'll sail, like the following week, like early in the week. So when it sails, it takes about a week to get here from Florida, but then it needs to clear customs, and that can take anywhere between a couple of days to a couple of weeks based on where the item you ordered, where it's from. So if it's, made in the US and it's not like internationally based, it can clear right away. It can be available to pick up on island in a couple of days. A couple items, if they're we didn't really have anything international, so we didn't have long wait times to clear customs. But let's say you ordered some unique hardware from Germany, or if I had ordered something that, the country of origin wasn't the United States, it could take a couple weeks plus a pretty expensive duties fee.
Yeah.
But I tried really hard to source everything. The PGT, windows and doors, all of the invoicing said made in America. So I really wasn't questioned about anything.
So it's definitely not a quick process.
No, you have to be very patient, and
got to plan it out for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the longest lead time items for construction on island is the windows and doors, or are the windows and doors. If they're made in the US, that's great. They can still take a long time to get here on island. And then that can delay a lot of construction, because if you can't enclose your space, you can't start to tile and install cabinets and all these fixtures because you want to get your windows and doors in place. It rains pretty often here on island, so you just don't want to have your job site exposed to the elements. So I think that we usually budget about, 16 to 20 weeks just in our mind. If we put a construction schedule together, we know we're ordering the windows and doors that much in advance to allow them to arrive, clear customs. You want to plan it around weather, you want to plan it around holidays, you want to make sure that you're able to deliver it to your job site and install it right on time so that it doesn't trickle down and start to put off any other construction elements that need to be put in place. So yeah, that is definitely something that's taken into consideration by trades on island. And these are just some more. Oh, go ahead.
And that brings up another question. When it comes to the trades down on the island, and say you have something that long lead time and it takes a while to get in and it's delayed and it's hung up, what's the current scenario down there with the craft forces and the trades? Are they, like if you get delayed a week, is that going to set you back another 3 with work that folks have going on? Or, what's it look like down there compared to on the mainland? Because, you literally are out on an island.
Right. It really could. I've seen a little bit of everything on island, where if something's delayed, another subcontractor can say, okay, you guys clearly aren't ready for me. I'm going to go to my other job site and come back when you're ready. And you just really hope that they come back. So that can happen.
Right.
I've seen that happen. But I think that given our location, given that we're such a small city, a lot of people that we work with know each other. And a lot of people will come to a job site and say, oh, I know who's tiling for you, and I know who's installing your windows and doors. And they will kind of gauge each other's schedules together.
Oh,
so
that's good.
Yeah, I've seen it work out really, really well, where people know each other and they're like, yeah, just call me when you're ready and I'll come right back. And then I've also seen situations where windows and doors are delayed, and then it ends up just changing the entire construction schedule, and you can get delayed very quickly.
Oh, yeah. Interesting.
It's good to know a lot of people on island, and kind of, if somebody can't make it because they're stuck on another job site, if you can call someone else to come in. And that does happen a lot too. And yeah, that's one of the perks of being in a small locale.
Right.
And yeah, here's a couple more photos of our tiled balcony, our railing getting installed. Those are my parents on the right. As I said before, they used to have a construction company, and they were very involved in making this happen. And that's all of us at the end. This is my last slide. we were really happy when we got to this point in construction. So
I bet. I
Yeah,
bet.
very rewarding.
Seeing the paint, with the just the conditions down there with, pretty much sunlight all the time, right?
Right.
Heat, wind, um, what type of paints are used down there, for durability purposes? Because I'm sure you probably got to use something a little heavier duty than what you would use, like on the outside of a house up on the mainland, say it's out in the farm in the middle of nowhere that doesn't really have a whole lot of that stuff.
Right. Well, our exterior paint for the walls is actually whatever it is that our Home Depot locally carries. Essentially, we just went, found our color, and said
And
this is
said,
for the
put it on there.
exterior.
Okay.
These are essentially plastered concrete walls.
Okay.
So our roof does have a top coat on it, and that is like special to a roof system, but our walls are just good old Home Depot Bear paint.
Okay. Cool. Um, as far as like permitting and such down there, is there what are the I guess what's the process like? Is there planning commissions, zoning commissions?
Oh, yes.
How plans I'd be very interested to hear what the plans examining process is for something down there.
Yeah, so
Because I mean
essentially,
it's you've got a whole bunch of different stuff to deal with than most other people.
yes, we definitely do. And that's essentially what I do all day for a living. And it's a lot of fun because, we're a small island, but we have so many microclimates and we have so many zones that, between coastal zoning, we have the historic division of Charlotte Amalie, that, there's those checks and balances that you have to go through if your project's located in a historic district. We have environmental protection. Properties over an acre in size need to go through the environmental division to you have to have your SWIP, your stormwater pollution prevention plan, approved prior to starting. So our process for this home, fortunately, was very straightforward. Well, for me, it was very straightforward because we although we are very close to the beach, we are not considered to be in the coastal zone. So we had to only secure two permits, which the first one was an earth change permit because this was just an untouched green piece of earth prior to starting. So we had to apply for a permit in order to start excavation and detail the amount of land we had planned to remove, what our silt fencing details were going to look like,
Mhm.
what our equipment on site storage plan was, like where we were parking equipment. And then, of course, the building permit itself included site plan, driveway plan, floor plans, elevations, and essentially all those utility plans too, detailing the amount of people living here and how much square footage everything was. So it was those two permits that I was able to design the drawings for and apply for in 2021. And we secured it in 2021. And other projects close to the beach would have to, prior to doing those two permits, would have to secure coastal zoning permission. And there's a whole other set of requirements for designing on the coastline. They want to make sure that anything you're adjusting on site does not lead to any, silt or debris or dirt going into the ocean.
Anything getting
Um,
dumped in there, yeah.
exactly. So there's usually very detailed grading plans, stormwater plans, and drainage plans required. Usually civil engineers and stormwater engineers are involved for those types of permits.
Mhm.
And then in the historic district, which I love working on projects in the historic district because it usually allows me to do these like fun renderings similar to what I showed earlier. And prior to applying for any permits, we do a public hearing to the Historic Preservation Committee and we detail the color choices, the window and door selection, and um, all any kind of renovation or repairs that are planned in the historic district. We detail it and we show how we are acknowledging the historical nature of that site or that building type. And once the committee approves of that, then you're allowed to go through the next steps of the permitting process.
Interesting. So it's a pretty involved process, like
Yes.
planning and such anywhere. Um, the Go ahead.
Oh, it is. I think that, so I grew up here in St. Thomas, and I grew up watching my parents take on project after project and building after building. And I think I was pretty far removed from the permit process. And that's how this whole house came to be. I was watching them build, and I was like, I'm going to build my own house. I'm going to be an architect. And I think as I studied architecture and got my license and became an architect, I realized everything that goes in before you could even break the ground. And permitting, I think, was one of the biggest lessons, because even my parents as contractors, they're involved after the fact. They're involved after the permit is secured. So they
Right.
weren't seeing the years of design
Done
and yes,
planning
prior,
and
exactly. So
all
they
the
were like,
front end stuff. Yeah.
yeah, they're like, what's a SWIP permit? And
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
you have to present
Well,
to the city. And
yeah.
so that was a
Well, there's
big
still
lesson.
we have plenty of people on the mainland and in the States that don't know what a SWIP plan is.
Right.
So yes, right.
Right.
And
I mean,
they're very important.
exactly. I think that we all have an inkling of, okay, we're adjusting the earth where we have to kind of design where rainwater goes, but the way that it's documented and then shared with all
Yeah.
parties on a project is
Yeah.
really important.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I can't even imagine when like down in that area when a storm comes through, not like a hurricane or maybe just a decent rainstorm, just what happens with, I mean, it's only got one place to go and
Right.
it's,
Yeah.
um,
Oh,
because I
I've
know
got some stories.
when I was down there, you can see like where washouts have occurred before.
Yes.
So I can only imagine that, some of that stuff just you really got to be cognizant of what you're doing with your
Yeah.
foundations. How far in the ground do they have to go? Do they need to go to, is solid bearing or do they need to look for rock? What type of, I mean, are they piles? What are some of the foundation options?
Yes, so it's all based on what your soil conditions are for that site. So our site was just pure rock.
Rock.
So yes, so as long as you find that bearing capacity or rock, and then on some of the projects that are located on the coast where it's very sandy, you will use like pier foundations, and you will have to go down and or sometimes create like a raft foundation below those softer soils or sands to create that solid foundation. So in this example, we were kind of chipping away at the rock as much as possible, but we had that solid foundation.
Right.
But yeah, there's definitely more of a structural undertaking for projects located on the coast.
Okay. And then that has to take into account seismic requirements and
Absolutely.
such, what, just a real quick, and there's one more question here, and I think we'll get wrapped up. It's seismic considerations. What
Yes.
are some of the seismic considerations that have to be? Because that, you never really think of it, but you've
Mhm.
got underwater earthquakes, you've got tsunamis, you've got all kinds of stuff. What has to be some of the considerations that are taken into account?
Right. Also, yeah, the Virgin Islands are located like very close to the Puerto Rico Trench, which we have a lot of seismic activity here. Essentially, when my structural engineer and I started the design, we looked at the ATC ratings of this exact location, like in the latitude and longitude of this site. And he sized all of the rebar sizes and also how big this concrete home could be. Right now, it's a 24 by 24-foot span. This wall down the center is a load bearing wall that's carrying the roof, and it goes down and carries load down to the ground level. We couldn't span too much larger than this without adding additional reinforcement. So that would be when you see concrete homes on island, they will have columns more often, and you'll see a lot of beams in the ceiling carrying loads and breaking up some of the loads of the concrete slabs, and that is for seismic resistance. You just can't span too long without that additional support. So we looked at it essentially, we look at every project on island as a case by case basis, where you're located on the hill, what your elevation is on the hill. When you could be located, I'm very close to the shore, but you could also be located at a very high elevation on a mountaintop. So we look at your elevation and what that does to your wind loads and seismic loads, and then that adjusts all of your details for the home accordingly. So each house ends up being a custom design based on your
Wow.
location. Yeah,
Wow. Yeah, I can imagine that can get pretty crazy.
right.
Um, I think, and last question we've got here, the ever popular question, budget versus actual cost.
Oh man,
How
yeah.
did how did that come out? And then if you can just kind of cover some of the general information on the added cost of shipping materials to the island when projects are estimated and such. Is it just early stages percentages? Are there, good, what kind of benchmarks are used to uh, avoid I guess, the quote plus shipping that we
Right.
always see?
Right. Oh, I can talk about this all day. Yeah. So, we started the design and the planning for this in 2020, before a lot of material inflation began. And on island, let me back up a little bit. So I've been working in architecture firms on island since 2014, and then I've been licensed and on my own since for the last 3 years. But over the last 10 years, I have seen this crazy increase in price, and there was a couple of factors that I can at least say, like, in my opinion, are what changed price of construction here on island. So for beginners, we had hurricanes Irma and Maria in 2017. There were two Category 5 hurricanes back to back in 2017. And I had already been working for around 3 years at that point on island. And when prior to the storms, when we would be working on a project, we would have contractors calling us nonstop at the company that I was working with, knocking down our door, asking us, do you have any projects for us? Do you have any projects I can put a bid on? And they were really pursuing work through us. But after the storms, there was so much destruction and so much to be repaired on island that the roles were really reversed, and we would seek out contractors' bids and really try to get contractors to work on our projects and our designs as much as possible. But local contractors on island were just inundated with work. So
Mhm.
in 2017, we saw a cost of construction just because of the storms, and there was just more of a demand. So labor was charging more, and contractors could essentially charge more because they were in such high demand. And it's never really changed from then. I still find myself seeking bids from several contractors, and the common response is, I'm really busy, I'm really busy. And
Mhm.
it's really me trying to negotiate with them to just get their time and attention to put an estimate together. And then in 2020, things really changed again. And if I mean, I'm so glad we built this house within the last year. If I waited a bit longer, it would have been so much more in cost. Um, Back in 2019, construction was around $350 a square foot. And that is around the price that we paid for our home. But it is a very small home. And I had
Mhm.
the added benefit of being able to GC my own project through the advice of my parents, who were also general contractors. So that price is not something you will find very common on island, because the cost of construction on island now is $600 a square foot. And
Wow.
yeah,
And
and that's the
that's just
standard.
your just rough benchmark base square footage.
Very
Is that any
rough.
management fee on top of it?
So 600 is usually with the contractor's overhead and profit included, but that is for a single family home
Right.
being built. If there is a high-end villa or a vacation home being built with nicer finishes and kind of all the bells and whistles, and maybe not sourcing your light fixtures from Home Depot, it will be a
Right.
thousand dollars a square foot very
Wow.
easily,
Yeah.
because excavation alone, even just for our home, took 3 months.
Right.
The trucking required and the labor required for that is a huge ticket item. And So if you're excavating a new site from green earth and you're pouring concrete and you're planning for wind loads and seismic and hurricanes and longevity, that price just increases so quickly, and people are willing to pay it, and contractors are able to charge it essentially. And the only way I was able to kind of make out like a bandit the way I was because my parents were really just functioning as construction manager advisor to me, and
Right,
I was doing a lot of the work myself, sourcing a lot of it, driving it to the site myself, and
right,
calling distributors and manufacturers myself. And so there was a lot of time and energy put into that. And a lot of my colleagues on island want to build, and I essentially tell them it will become your new full-time job if you're trying to save
yeah,
on cost,
yeah, yeah,
so yeah, and I think
yeah,
that building with wood is more cost effective and maybe faster than doing an all concrete build like we did, but there are other costs associated with changing your building material. So you may build with wood or CMU block in an effort to save on construction, but then if you're going for homeowners insurance, you're charged that much more insurance
right.
because your home may not be as secure as a concrete build.
Exactly, especially with some of the things that have come through there in recent years. I didn't
Yeah,
see a whole lot of wood structures standing after that last go around. So,
right.
and that brings me up to one more thing. When it comes time for like removal of excavation, and if you've got haul off and stuff, you mentioned that some of your boulders were able to be reused at another site close by. What happens to the stuff that can't be reused or dirt can't be reused, construction debris? Is there, I'm assuming, when I was down there, I didn't see any landfills or anything on the island.
No,
So
right.
does it
There
all,
is one, but
okay, does it all get taken out of there? What
you have
happens
to
to it?
you have to pay to have it removed
Okay,
essentially. Yeah, so you're paying to
which is not cheap.
no, it's not cheap. So essentially it works out really well when, if you're building and another job site. And I think fortunately in my position and in my parents' position, we networked so much on island where we knew people that had a need. Um, but if you don't, and if you maybe have so much that, you need to offload it, you would pay to bring it to a landfill or to the dump, or, hopefully you would sell it. In the best situation, you would sell someone who needs it. But oftentimes you have to just pay a trucking company to remove it from your site.
Awesome. All right. Well, we are up against the hour, folks. Emily, this was fantastic.
Thank you.
I
This
know
was so much fun.
we looked at it a couple weeks ago, and I know you were still working on it, putting stuff together, and I thought it looked great then. It looks even better now. So, thank you
Thank
again for this.
you.
This was a very interesting insight into building in an area that not really a lot of people get exposed to. So, thank you for your time, and folks, thank you for showing up. Emily, I'm glad have you as part of our upcoming board of directors. Looking forward to that. And
Thank you.
folks, keep an eye out to CSINext website, the CSIresources.org website for upcoming information on our May chapter meeting. That'll be coming out here in the next couple of weeks, and we'll see everybody then.
Thanks so much. Thanks for the opportunity.
All right. Goodbye,
Take
everybody.
care.